And we are live. Howdy, mates. Fancy a nice stream in it. Not very good at being... I can't do these accents, you know. I try and they fall apart immediately. So hello to Dr. Crispy, to Nicodemus and Liz, who are currently here, that I know of. I was late for about a minute, so I apologize for that. But here we are. Let's take a few minutes until people jump over here. Those who are willing. I actually misscheduled the stream initially for 11 a.m. tomorrow, and it's 11 p.m. now. So as I was checking, it was if everything was fine. It says 12 hours from now. It can't be bloody 12 hours. So that was solved. Glad I caught it in time, so people know to adjust. Kitty pants, JK, and yeah, I know I'm terrible. You know. Considering I'm from the Balkans, 1 minute late, that's like a miracle. From North Wales, first time I was aware that we had viewers from Wales. Glad to see you, St. Alban, the Saint White. How is everyone doing? I mean, to those of you who are American, your weekend isn't over yet, but you're right. Greek is the same. Yeah. That's why I said the Balkans are not specifically Serbia. Yeah, we invented time. We invented alternating current. So you're very much welcome for Tesla. Otherwise, you'd be, watching YouTube in the dark. OG2NV says ciao. I suppose that's how I should read it. Which is how we also informally say hi in Serbian. And I know you're all acquainted with the ciao. It's a very, very prominent way of saying hi informally. I wonder if the German tschüss is also derived from that, or if it has some different origin. Zdravo, yes, that's slightly more formal, and that's similar to the French salut, saludad. Although it doesn't mean, it means literally good health to you, or something of that, something along those lines. It's just that you spelled it CAO, right? So what we would call shave Latin script. So I wasn't sure if I was reading into it or not. Isn't it past your bedtime? I haven't got a bedtime. I'm far too dysfunctional and autistic to have a proper schedule. That's my type of autism, not the fully regimented one. But so, right, we have about 33 people watching right now. So I will. Привет. There you go. So I will be starting soon. I'm perfectly aware that this isn't the ideal time to stream. Yesterday we had some visitors over, so I didn't. Today I'm free, and I actually have a topic I'd like to address and combine it in addition to what I wrote in the description. 33. You see, I haven't even noticed the fact that it was 33 and how important that is. It's 32 and one is by invite only. So I might as well begin. So I was watching the regular lineup for geopolitical analysis because I'm following what's going on. You know, I've been streaming on it. But I'm not here to stream on it today, but actually to go on a tangent that on a point I arrived at while listening to it, and listening to an analysis of a person who's pretty cool-headed, you know, not some emotional wreck who is distraught by what is going on over in the Israel-Palestine or Israel-Gaza conflict. But I've heard talking points that you will hear throughout the political commentariat, both on the left and on the right. Specifically, we're talking about the idea of like the Jews believe that they are racially superior, and then it's one thing to say that; it's a separate thing to say the Bible claims that, because a lot of people claim the Bible and believe something completely contradictory to it. That's not our. That's that. So it's not even about that specific claim. I will address it, although this has been done much better by the stream. Jim Bob, Jay Dyer, and I did on Jim Bob's channel about dispensationalism. So that's if you are completely interested in that specific claim, that's where you should go. I will give a very short rundown of that. But the problem is the person I'm talking about isn't a religious person, or at least not in the classical sense that we use religious person, not a person of a particular faith, more of that spiritual, not religious type. But there you go. If that is what you believe is being taught, that is how you're going to react to it. I've spoken before of even like Calvinist atheists, and that's not to draw some type of parallel between materialistic and religious determinism. That is to simply say, if you believe the Bible teaches Calvinism and you apostatize, you still believe that the Bible teaches Calvinism. You just reject it, as opposed to having believed it beforehand. So it's not like people who apostatize or who hadn't been Christian in the first place will have some unbiased view of the teachings of the Scripture. That's not true. Not true for any religion, but we're here to talk about Christianity and the Bible in particular, and maybe mention some counter examples in Islam. So that's the first thing I will address. The second thing I will address is the Twitter exchange I mentioned that has developed under one of my comments on Twitter, whatever it was. And it's also part of this entire ordeal of interpreting the Scriptures. So eye for an eye has everyone blind, and that's sort of debatable. It reminds me too much of if you kill a killer, then the number of killers in the world remains the same. To which the simplest answer is, well, then kill 5. There's 4 fewer. In short, I've parroted mass media all my life. Yes. I think that line, Nicodemus, is specifically attributed to Gandhi, although who knows, and ultimately who cares? So yeah, on the topic I've opened up already. So when this person, I won't name the person, it's like a 69-year-old man. You know, it's not like I'm going to start being particularly formative on him. I think this is his genuine belief. I don't think anything I claim here is a result of, lying. because we have seen in behavior of certain groups, of Jewish groups, that they do absolutely see it this way. And unfortunately, some of those groups are in power in Israel. But secondly, if you're not Christian, if you're not interested in studying these topics in any depth, then you're definitely going to just go along with what seems to be most impactful. It is how we view the world. If we don't study anything about Hinduism, all you're going to get is, they have the elephant god and they throw dung at each other. So you're not going to spend a lot of time investigating a pretty complex system of beliefs. Hello, Randy. From the Orthodox Christian point of view, where do people from other religions go when they die? Everyone is judged according to how they live their lives. People who have been given much will be asked of them. Those who have been given little shall be asked of them. So if you grew up in some Central Asian village, which statistically would mean you would grow up a Muslim, you will be judged by how you conducted yourself within that context. You can still try. We believe that the law is written on the hearts of men, not that it is about undergoing processes that you have no access to, or anything of the kind. So ultimately, God judges. This is why when we Orthodox reply with, "We don't know. We are not the judges of souls. We can't tell you, oh, you're going to hell, oh, you're not going to hell," because even the church is very stringent on whom it will declare such a thing for. So is Scriptures, by the way. It is people hear these warnings and they interpret them as predictions. And again, this accursed literalism and legalism, let's not even go with literalism, just call it legalism, is what leads into this lawyerish approach to how we judge people, and we can stack up things on this side and stack up things on the other, and then we weigh things, which, sounds suspiciously similar to what Anubis would do in Egyptian mythology. Hello, Grant's Modern Life. I watched a documentary about the illegal settlements in the West Bank. It's like the Stanford prison experiment strengthening psychopathy in their own population and demoralization in Palestinians. That's why I say these people are in power. Like, the person who would be in charge of the settlement thing would be Ben-Gvir. This is thuggish behavior. And I will not go into politics, but that's just an example of why one might believe that is how what the Scriptures teach. And a second layer of this is people who would, for example, challenge the Orthodox or the Catholic canon of Scripture by saying, well, the Jews have this Old Testament canon. Well, who cares? Do you know what they don't have? Jesus. That's the word of God that is far more imminent in the life of a Christian than the Scriptures. That's of course not to impose a dichotomy between the two. We say both. But if you're illiterate, which most people who have lived in the world have been, you're not going to go and read anything by definition, but you don't need to read Jesus. You live a life according to his commandments and participating in his grace, love, and mercy. And that is how you get to know God, not by developing all types of models that allow you to predict what's in Antarctica, which country is which beast in Daniel, etc. All of these just ghastly, pet projects of pastors, whether mad or just cynical or both. Illiterate gang. Right. So, if we approach this thing, chosen people, which is, by the way, when we talk about it, also very related to how we see the elect or whatever. The chosenness of the people that are called Israel, there's a multitude of levels where how that is seen as some type of ethno-supremacy is wrong. First and foremost, the term is technically incorrect, as we say chosen, because the nation of Israel is created to be amongst the other nations, and is created to be this type of priestly nation. Obviously fails drastically at it, but that's let's not get all too condemnatory on the matter, because we failed on a daily level as well. It's easy to read the scriptures and say, well, I would have, you probably would have been worse, as would have I. But it's, nice to be able to sit in such a position and judge in retrospect, as much as it is easy to judge in hypotheticals. I keep bringing up the example of zombie apocalypses. You're not going to be some glorious hero. Probably not. We can hope and pray to have the moral fortitude to be so, and not slip into animalistic behavior out of sheer rage and despair. But back to the topic properly. It is a created nation, and it is a nation, as the scriptures say, created of a multitude of people. It's not a genetic thing, as I keep emphasizing. So if you already have a non-genetic Israel, how do you get this idea of ethnic supremacy? So even at the start, it doesn't work. But as things move on, and this I will address this a bit later, which is the second topic I mentioned, that we have Moses marrying an Ethiopian woman. We have Eliezer, son of Aaron, marrying a South Libyan woman who is black, which is why their son is given the name Phineas, who becomes the high priest. Phineas meaning he of dark skin, one of dark skin. So this isn't a genetic thing, because that's not how the people in the ancient world thought. This way of thinking is about 200 years old at most, other than viewing things like magic blood within some type of family of divine origins. Hello, Rachel. 23andMe is the most absurd weapon used against moronic boomers who wish to be bagels. Yeah, they wear it with like a chip on their shoulder. Rubbish. So the thing about it is that it not being a genetic thing means it's something else, and I want to address that. Scrolling YouTube, and the strange Serbian man see a strange Serbian man, so I clicked it. Hello, Chris Lestrange. So what it is throughout the scriptures, it is a religious entity, a religious identity. It is the participation in the Passover, and things like circumcision and observances of all the regulations and commandments that God has placed. That makes you an Israelite. If you abandon those, you are no longer an Israelite. No amount of, and St. Paul is also clear on this, no amount of appeal to genetics is going to save you, even in the Old Testament. So I'm not just going to quote the Lord who says, God can make sons of Abraham out of stone. So even in the Old Testament, you are not part of this if you're not participating in the worship of God and following the moral examples. Obviously, there is a level of tolerance. It's not, you missed regulation X, Y, or Z, so you're out now. God has his patience, but as we are also told, like the cup of wrath can be full, and it doesn't end well either on an individual level or on the level of nations. So that's just to speak about how wrong it is to have this interpretation. However, wrong interpretations aren't just academic mistakes. They lead to a change in behavior. They lead to certain ways of viewing both yourself and people outside of, in this case, ethno-religious group, which, as I said, is sort of a repetition, saying ethno-religious in the old sense of the words. And we see this in Israel right now with these people like your Likud and Gevers and whatever type of view you want to have. Although obviously there are groups which do not hold this position. They might put an emphasis on blood, but they don't have then also accompany that with some type of aggressiveness against people who aren't genetically or ethnically Jewish. So it's not a a direct sequitur. We have to emphasize that we can't allow ourselves to lose nuance because we are outraged. This is the entire point of the stream is to avoid exactly that. But considering how it has real world consequences, so we have neutral observers who aren't Bible believing in either the Old or the New Testament. And then they look at the consequences of the ones who claim themselves as, observers of those sacred texts. And so they believe that therefore they're going to have a proper understanding, and they glean their understanding from that. And it certainly doesn't help that there is no shortage of, religious and Bible scholars who interpret things so outrageously poorly, as Father Stephen DeYoung says, papers need to be written and articles need to be published. There's an incentive in academia to push for novelty because, look at this take on this particular thing. It's sort of like listening to covers of like classic songs. I don't even just mean like classical music. I mean, like 70s, 80s, or 60s, whatever. Look at this new take on this thing. So there's a hipness to it, and not to mention the motivated part, which I'm considering and I'm talking about, is the part that addresses, geopolitical realities. You're seeing slaughter of people. You're seeing starvation, deprivation of medicaments, of anesthetics, which, when I was a boy growing up in Serbia, I did have to undergo like having my lower lip. I fell and tore it by hitting on an armrest of a couch, and I had to have that stitched up. And it wasn't a very pleasant thing, but that's a pretty minor intervention as compared to what needs to go on in an active war zone. But back to the topic, it's you then are going to have that type of thinking solidified, calcified even, because you're not doing it with the intent of religious study. you're doing it with the intent of trying to understand what's going on, and that's when sorry, not religious bias, but exegetical, I suppose, bias would really kick in, because there's the immediacy of it, there's a tragedy of it, there's, you can't allow yourself as a human being, basically, to take your time, because you're trying to understand a situation that is ongoing, current, and also quite disturbing to look at. That does a number on one's patience, especially one that seems so completely, academic, and it's unfortunate. Also, all over Twitter, you have people who say things like, well, the Jews believe they're the chosen people, Jewish supremacy is the biggest threat to the world, which is, again, one thing to say that there are those people, and a second thing to say that that's what the Bible teaches. And that needs to be emphasized when these things are mentioned, because it's one thing to claim that as a Christian and critique the position, and a separate thing to use it as this very, very short form of critique on basically like a political jab, which of course favors brevity, and brevity is the greatest breeding ground for confirmation bias. That's why I talk about the difference between proverbs and what are they called? Slogans. Right, it becomes a slogan, and then everyone can use it as they wish, because it has no particularly important substance to it. It's just there to be some type of war cry. And when you have these discussions on Twitter, you can just end up being the Christian, or even someone like a Hasidic Jew. On the other hand, you can become an Adam Green, and see it as this giant plan to take over the world. And that's my issue, and why I think this constantly needs to be responded to. And when I try to push back on these things, I give the examples that I give because I believe that they're short, and I believe that they're substantive enough to be understandable, and are actually pretty, how shall we say, impactful, in the sense that it's not like gleaming from this tiny piece. Well, if it's like proving from a negative, like proving from an absence. I was like, well, God doesn't specifically say you are the greatest humans by blood ever. It's very substantive, and it really shows throughout the Old Testament. Not just the arrival of the new covenant, but that the old covenant is a conditional covenant, and that the old covenant, which is a conditional covenant, will will have intermissions, such as the Babylonian captivity, such as the captivity to the Greeks, and later on to the Romans, because God says, you are not special. If you don't follow my commandments, you're failing the purpose I gave you, and you will be to me like any other nation. And again, conditional, conditional, conditional. So this idea that unfortunately can arise even in Christianity, that, hey, we're doing pretty well right now, it must mean that God favors us. That's not how we should view things. That's not the Orthodox way of viewing things. That's not the biblical way of doing things, which is why God, in both the Old and the New Testament, imposes certain self-restrictions. The most simple one being fasting. But even, saying to be temperate in food and drink, saying, to set aside time for prayer, and to set aside material wealth for almsgiving. These are to be restrictive to not allow us to become too comfortable with ourselves. Because if we do, we become what Israel became in the Old Testament, and ultimately God will give us over to a certain level of suffering so that might be corrected. And maybe that's what's happening right now. We will see. Not mine to know. Mine is to pray for peace and always. So yes. Any questions on this particular topic, or should I go to the next one? Your parish has other ideas. I can believe that. It's not the. As I said, it's not unique to the Jews. Certainly, it's not. It has happened all throughout the Christian world. Maybe it doesn't go exactly to the point of ethnic in the genetic sense, but ethnic in the nationalist sense, because nation doesn't necessarily mean singular blood or singular origin. You know, the northern and southern parts of France aren't the exact same genetically. But they are a nation and they operate as a nation, and therefore a French nationalist, will view it as France. Someone like Chris Lestrange, for example. But this is the case all throughout the world. So God is very, very keen on reminding us not to go along with comfort. The establishment of the Feast of Tabernacles is a practical example of that. Go into the desert with the tabernacle, worship there like you were in, your ancestors at least were before I gave you this land. Don't get comfortable. If you're comfortable and you're not being disturbed by any demonic influence, that means the demons are fine with where you are. This has been said many times. Rachel Wilson for $20. Thank you so much, Rachel. He sends a super sticker. Highly appreciated, especially with all the education that's expenses I've been having. But thank God that's fine. I'm under no pressure anymore, but it always helps. And if not for that, then for beer, while we still have time before the Nativity fast, which is on the 27th. If you're an old calendarist, you are on the new calendar. You've already been underway in preparation for the 25th of December. Yes, being comfortable. That's it's one thing to be content spiritually. Another one is to be comfortable, because even you get a certain comfort from the Lord. That's a separate thing. But the saints always pursue further. They make the fast even more strict. To be clear, a lot of them were monastics, and that's not. That doesn't mean we should follow every single example, because we are not we're not pursuing that particular calling, right? In the Old Testament, not everyone is called to be a Nazarite and to take those vows. But if nothing else, we can see the example and apply it to our lives, and start restricting things that are making us stray from God. And there's plenty of things to do that with without going too harshly and cause ourselves to break. And that is where the church comes in, and your spiritual father, and why we shouldn't presume ourselves competent to impose appropriate restrictions on ourselves. Maybe the demons aren't fine where you are. Maybe you just aren't important enough for them to bother with. They aren't limited in numbers or power. They do need to prioritize. Well, let me tell you, Patrick, I appreciate the comment and the sentiment. But the thing is, it doesn't take a lot to cause people to go astray. obviously, there are people of higher importance that would be a priority target. But I've heard from a lot of people who have told me, how they started attending catechesis, some who have even been baptized since I've been doing this. But in my own experience and with the experience they share with me, like when they start catechesis, when they start fasting, they start to notice things happening that usually wouldn't have happened to them. Thoughts going into their head that they wouldn't have had, like cravings, etc. We shouldn't view it as simply a type of manpower, because we don't know how many there are. And the fact is, they're not physical beings, so it's not like there's a problem of them fitting in a place or something, and certainly very difficult to count. But God allows for us to face these temptations, and and these, this testing, which I repeat is a blacksmithing term. It's a term for purifying metal. We come out of that stronger, or we break. So, if it's not just a manpower problem. Rachel is listening while she cooks. That's great to hear. I've been doing cooking this weekend as well. For me, it's very, very calming to cook, because I usually also put something, to listen to, either some podcast or some lecture, and it allows you to focus. Slowboy Whiteboard posts this link for my PayPal if that's what you're interested in. YouTube just took Posh's rent money off of Rachel's donation. So yes, the best way to support is PayPal. It's in the description, etc. But I understand the gift-giving season is coming, so I absolutely understand that you're prioritizing getting presents for your family, especially the little ones. So it's absolutely no pressure, as I've said. I'm listening while I set brick and mortar for my chimney. Oh, that's proper fun. I wish. Whoops. I PayPal'd you as you get more. Now, let me check. Yes, thank you. Let me just make sure I don't read out your name. For €8, which I suppose might have been like $10 or something. I'm not sure, but thank you very much, Rigovich. Highly appreciated. But as I said, I've been working less on the garden than I usually would, or on the property. I did have to do a proper raking before we got into like more rain and snow coming along, because you don't want that to happen, because they stick together and then they start rotting, and no one is happy about that. So I did do that, clearing out certain lighting from the lower garden, because they work on solar energy, and not a lot of that to go around as we approach winter. So yeah, Funko's battle. Put some chili flakes in this time, so we'll try that next time. Definitely improves it, brings out intensity of the celery taste. Chili flakes in celery soup with mushrooms, corn, and jalapeno. Perhaps. I do like spicy food, very common in Serbia. But I haven't eaten like a celery soup, so I'm trying to imagine how all of that works together. Although jalapenos are already spicy as they are. I'm told. I actually haven't had a jalapeno. I just know it's like not a particularly hot pepper, but maybe my views are skewed by my exposure to a lot of those people who eat like spicy things. Like what's it called? The wings, when they eat hot chicken wings. Pim Orosh or Oros. Again, I keep forgetting. I don't know if you tell me, but sends in $10, and it's a Christmas present, so I appreciate it very much. I'll have to do something music-wise for Christmas. There is still time, so I have exams on the 1st of December, and I'll find someone to torture to do the editing, and then do at least a couple of songs. Did you get my PayPal donation? Seem more trustworthy than those starving Africans. Well, I certainly don't look starving, do I? Who somehow get on television despite being poor. I only received one, and paprika, yes. Say paprika in English, I suppose, but I didn't get one from you, Justin Henley. So maybe just give it some time. Guys, I won't lie, that sounds awful. Well, I believe both Rigovich and I'm sure about Decius, but I think Rigovich is also from Britain. So don't be surprised when combinations are brought up as far as culinary concoctions are concerned. But I've realized that I've been wrong on certain, how should we say, prejudgmental approaches to just hearing about combos, and they turned out better than I thought. One thing I will never concede on is sweet sauces on savory meat. Like I'd rather just eat the bread and that's it. So just say, Justin Henley, don't try resending anything for a while. Posh, did you watch World War Now's most recent podcast? They are looking for a narrator. I can email you information about it. I would really love if you considered it. If they're interested, sorry, I dropped my cigarette. If they're interested, certainly. So to email me, the one in the email in the description is just the PayPal. God damn it, I'm doing it again. PayPal one. If you want to email me about something particular, a question you have, or whatever, it's a Posh Redneck, not the Posh Redneck. That one was taken. And if you are too hasty and email the Posh Redneck, you might surprise someone like Jim Bob did with one of our debate preps and confuse an unfortunate fellow. So aposhredneck@gmail.com. So I'm willing to do so. Posh, are you isolated there in your area? No. I'm in a town of about 25,000 people. So no, otherwise I wouldn't have internet, I promise you. If you're serving with your moustache like a Mexican villain, because, as I repeat, my older brother, took all the facial hair genes from my family. So I'm very unhappy about that, but it is what it is. It is my burden to bear. Posh is isolated because he actually lives in Siberia, not Serbia. Or Syria, depending on how American you are in missing the place. Oh, amazing glory to God. You're talking about my response. I thought someone gave us some news about getting into catechetical lectures or something. Right. So, since there are no particular questions on the topic, I will move on to the discussion. I I was invited to be part of, but I thought was actually too bent out of shape to correct, especially on Twitter, because I'm not paying a premium for Twitter. It's like more for fun for me. So limited characters, and with my penchant for brevity and conciseness in my speech, it would take like 10 tweets per point, and I'm just not willing to do that. Would you swap out your deep voice for a big beard? No, that's just not happening. It's too epic. I still wouldn't look good with a beard, but I at least sound good without one. Oh, goodness. And the entire theme was also related to this: is Israel genetic? And I already gave the example of Moses marrying the Ethiopian woman, and Eleazar marrying a Libyan woman, having a son called Phineas. And Phineas, whom does Phineas go with? We have Caleb, who is a Canaanite. So we have these dirty Canaanites who are to be ethnically cleansed, so genetically destroyed, which again wasn't the thing. You also have people converting, both men and women, because that was seen as ethno-destruction, right? Ethnic cleansing to destroy a religious system. In this case, one of the most vile and disgusting ones. That doesn't mean you get free pass if you don't like a particular religion. Well, we just get to nuke the place then, I suppose. That's not how we're to view things. Again, if God commands it, it's one thing. When we start doing things like we heard certain Israeli officials invoking the seed of Amalek, like, you don't get to designate someone to be the seed of Amalek. Guess who was the seed of Amalek? The Amalekites. So maybe. So if you're going to go the genetic route, then go the genetic route. If you're going to go the metaphorical route, then go the metaphorical route. And in neither routes do you currently get the legitimacy to do this. So Ruth was a Moabite, yes. Who are worse, Midianites or Canaanites? Canaanites. My summary so far: Israel is not about some genes. Ethnicity may correlate with a nation even with different genes, and Chris is French. Well done, well, Emmanuel. That well at the beginning of your name is short for well done, at least for this joke. So the Midianites actually fall out of a proper religious context. So Canaanites were just, all Canaanite. Chris is French. Oh, I love setting up these things. But one of my favorite types of jokes, which is World War III happening, could be, but also I don't think so. That doesn't mean I'm not very wrong, but I talked about it on stream, Dan Bruce, earlier, on when was it? Friday. So you can listen to my thoughts there if you haven't, but I don't think so. I think it could easily slip into that, but there's so much to lose that I don't think even elites are trying to catch it. It's just trying to save face, and maybe they fail. Midianites were descendants of Abraham and his second wife, Keturah. That's what I'm trying to say. Like Midianites, we have Egyptians talking about how the Midianites worship Yahoo. But I mentioned I didn't mention it on stream. I was talking to Jimbo. That quote from Romans, Jacob I have loved, Esau I have hated. So we're talking about the Edomites, not about the persons Jacob and Esau, because, believe it or not, Esau was a pretty good guy. Turned out he made mistakes, and that's a different thing, but he reconciles with his brother. So let's not get into that now, but basically Israel also named after a guy. So way more common than you'd think. Weren't the Israelites handed over to the Midianites twice for disobeying the Lord? Well, as I said, the Midianites fall off. They don't stay faithful. They start off well, but then fall off, sort of like the northern kingdom of Israel. Started off decently, went into polytheism, and Esau was a good hairy dude, exactly. But if I need to repeat this, the reason why we see the opposite of what we should be expecting from the whole approach we see from like Hegelian thinking and similar streams of thought, we don't get from polytheism upwards into monotheism. You get a lot of falling from monotheism into polytheism, and the way this is explained is you can't negotiate with the ultimate master of the universe, even in our conception of a loving one, let alone if you have some, I don't know, cruel one, or like the pagan conception is just, listen, I'm a higher being, you sort of suck. Not sort of, you definitely suck as a human being. You're ontologically lower than me, and therefore deserve whatever I give you. So that's one thing. Then a lot of them think that supreme deity is just absent or impersonal, etc. But there's these smaller deities you can negotiate with because there's something you can give to them. The only thing we can give to God is our love, which is shown through faith, not belief, some mental, mental activity, but how we live, faithfulness, and that is how we love God. And this is what is so important in our understanding of the patience of God, etc. But as far as trying to get some competing family or tribe or nation, trying to get one over on them, trying to get one over on some business competitor, or trying to get a guy or girl to like you, that is much easier to achieve in their thinking by going after some lesser deity, some spirit that is local there, because you can strike a quid pro quo. Hello, Rip. It was depressing to hear Orthodox prophecy on World War III and realizing America is not on the side of the good guys. I understand. I always have my reservations about these prophecies, because they tend to be. Sometimes you say, "Well, where did Saint Paisios say this?" And often you're just met with just memes, basically. Why do you think religion started as anthropomorphic polytheism? It actually didn't. What was it? Theriomorphic was far more common, and even in earlier Greek concepts of the gods, they were theriomorphic, which is sort of like the Egyptians. It's not anthropomorphic. You sometimes get to that, but it's not that simple. That's why I'm saying it didn't start off that way. In some nations, in some cultures, you get that immediately. In many, you don't, and you get all types of holy animals or a mix, as I said, the theriomorph. What's your take on? Oh, sorry, I should emphasize that. Death Culture for $10. Thank you so much. Says, what's your take? I just noticed the Imperial Guard profile picture. What's your take on the fraternal organizations overall? Not Freemasons, they're bad, but here in the West, I think fraternal orders can be a very good and useful thing. Good to catch your stream finally. Thank you for the donation, and thank you for the questions. Glad to see you here. I have no problem with it. It's sort of like a more formal friend group. The point is fraternal organization different to any type of organization? Certainly it's different in the sense of if you say fraternal, it means men only. But there's nothing wrong with it inherently. You organize, it can just be for men to hang out, which is what the majority of Freemasonry is. As when you study Freemasonry, most of them are there to pay dues, and that's why the top of it tolerate them. But I have no problem with them in essence, nor with some type of sorority, which you do have, like in Orthodoxy. I believe it was on Jim Bob's stream when Nada verse was on, my fellow compatriot, and she talked about and mentioned the topic of what we call kolosestara. So women would gather and help each other out. This was pretty common back in the day, just by virtue of most people living in villages. And so women would gather around. Often it's just information transfer because not in the sense of gossip, although I suppose that wasn't completely avoided. But the idea was most people learned everything through apprenticeship, much more so than looking up an article, looking up a video. That wasn't an option. So, you would exchange information about preserving food, about what... if you have like a young mother whose own mother is not there anymore, like no close female relatives to instruct on proper way to deal with a newborn child, how often you feed it, what's a sign of hunger, what's a sign of this or that. There is very much a close-knit community by nature of how people lived. Nowadays, I wouldn't have anything against those organizations as long as obviously they have good intentions. That should go without saying. What initiation rituals are involved in the fraternal organization matters. I suppose in the ones I'm thinking of being fine, it would be perhaps like here in Serbia, we have patron saints of education, of like even when we say like the medical system, they will celebrate Saints Cosmos and Damian, the holy doctors. The education system celebrates Saint Sava, my namesake, and different groups have different things. So maybe it would be like a fraternal organization with a particular focus on a particular saint. So maybe a prayer to that saint, etc. I would definitely ask people who want to discuss this with the clergy and not go off of, hey, a Serb said something online, so let's do it. So, yeah. None of the weird knife things and blindfolds and such. Female custodies, no. I got to go, but thanks, Porsche. Thank you, Rigovich. All the best in your endeavors. I suppose it's 11 p.m. in Britain. No female custodies. Much of the early staff and founders of Games Workshop have passed away, moved on. Yeah, it's a very, very long... you sort of think of it, if you, like me, you found about it through video games, you think it's quite a new thing, but no, it's quite an old game system. So, yeah, and pandering of, oh no, we need to have female representation in the religious, what do they call it, like, Clerofascistic space Nazis. We need women in there, goddammit. It needs a gentle touch in the grim, dark future. I don't know about 40k law, but tell the women to get back to their sororitas and leave the real war to the men. Well, Adepta Sororitas is pretty brutal. I think that's actually a pretty good choice of how they would behave. You know, if you got women who are into war, and we have examples of like women who were in charge of certain camps, and they were extremely brutal. So yeah, women just want to pet puppies and bake cookies. Yeah, that's not how it works. The emperor will be reborn as a black lesbian. Well, yeah. Let's not switch over into that. We've been talking about Israel. Would you talk to Adam Green again? Yes, I did say so. Someone asked him like a couple of streams ago. But if you've seen Jim Bob interact with him, he said he would not debate any more orthocucks except our daddy Jay Dyer. So it seems to me that he isn't interested in debating anyone except Jay. Who was that woman who hammered a nail into someone's head in the Book of Judges? Oh, I can't remember the name now. I know what you mean. She killed the opposing. It was with Gideon, wasn't it? I can't remember her name. Someone will have to remind me. I'm not good with names anyway, and then when studying the Bible, I have to learn them in like 5 languages, which doesn't help. Deborah? Was it Deborah? Could be. I'm sorry. That's the Judges is a book I haven't revisited in quite a while. Sprayed by Jim Bob. Nice. Hello, study of stuff. Oh. I will be on study of stuff. When did we say? We said Wednesday, 9 p.m. my time, which will be CET, so 3 p.m. EST. So if you're interested in listening to us there, that's what you can go, where you can go. I will share it, obviously, when it happens. Never seen Adam Green, but from what I've heard about him, doesn't seem worth taking seriously. No. I got quite upset that he denied, after debating me, he denied that he didn't know the difference between Jew and Israelite. And in our debate, he didn't, and I explained it to him, which he could have said. I've since learned that, but he pretended like he never had that, mistaken thing in mind, like they're the same thing. No. And his pride won't let him. A lot of people have so much pride that they can't allow themselves to ever admit being wrong, even though it would, go in favor of their credibility. I have no problem being corrected. Why would I? I've changed my mind a few times, and it can only go in my favor if I'm corrected. So that's what truly annoyed me about him. I understand people get things wrong. I get things wrong, but that attitude is quite ghastly. So, sorry. Just to check this here. From Justin Henley, I received your payment, and it converts it automatically to euros, so I'm sorry. That's how PayPal works here, for 18.5 euros. Oh, wait, did you attach a message to it? I should recheck that out. For a month's worth of clean water, bread, and a single packet of sugar. Thank you, Justin. Oh, it won't be live. Sorry. My mistake then. Then I will share it out when it's a finished product. In any case, we will be talking and you will be able to hear it after the fact. So yeah, it's this. What do they say? The easiest way to spot an amateur historian is by them reading themselves into history. We do so with exegesis as well, and by that I mean modern day exegesis becomes a type of eisegesis with some type of retrospective quality to it, and that is why a lot of people misread the scriptures. All of us do, because we grew up, in a time so different to almost all of history that it can't be avoided that we have certain views of things that are not common in world history. So people who wrote a book, or like the letters of Paul 2,000 years ago, even if you translated, it's difficult to translate without things like footnotes and stuff. I may have told this to you. Our news has been darkened, yes, and it can continue to be darkened, or we can start trying to cleanse it with God's mercy and following His commandments. But not even that. I mean, just in the simple sense of how language is developed. I might have mentioned my brother developed an interest in philosophy a couple of years ago and asked me for advice, and I told him what he should take from the library, and I told him it's best if we found some summary of Aristotle than taking a book of Aristotle, because if you just learn from the library in this case, you will notice that you will find pages where there is more surface dedicated to the footnotes than the text itself. He actually bought me this book as a gift. It is the Politeia by Plato, as you can see. And when you go into reading, here's just one I got. It's translated Serbian. See, this is the text, and then these are the footnotes. And then because you're going to have to go and explain so many things to give it context from ancient Greek culture that we would not take as granted nowadays. Another example I give from the scriptures is, why are we all called to be sons of God, including the women? It's because sons are the ones who receive inheritance. So from a modern standpoint, where this isn't the case, again, this isn't something that was also practiced basically everywhere up until recently, but in the specific context of the law, it is that the oldest son receives everything, and then he is tasked with sharing that out with his other brothers. So Christ, being the Son of God by nature, we become sons of God by adoption, and he shares the inheritance, and that is all of it. He receives from the Father, and we become participants in this. Now, infinitely, obviously, the infinite can be, shared out infinitely. So that is the particular message that is being sent. But if you don't have this nuance, you don't understand it, and you might even, interpret it as, oh, this is just for men. You even have certain people who view things like, because Christ came as a male, therefore women aren't saved, because of all of the talks like that which is not assumed is not saved, which was referring to human nature, but then someone decided to be, a hair splitter, and they started misusing the idea of nature and said, "Oh, it's male nature, so women wouldn't be saved." So nonsense gets the best of us very easily. But this is why context is so important. And if you ignore these things, and even people who will go out of their way to go into conspiracy theories in the Old Testament to maintain a certain interpretation of it, I don't know what to say. Some people are much more dedicated to being correct in their current iteration than they are to understanding things properly. Sons and heirs, yes, but we become sons by adoption. That applies to women as well, as I said, but that's not some gender bending thing. That's just in that context we would know what that means. What can I use as a modern day example? Let's go simple and say network, right? Now in the days we use network as a verb. What does it mean? It means to gather people and for them to connect in a particular manner. So they have this network, this cluster of relationships which allows them to operate on as almost like a unit. And networking, therefore, has this particular meaning of trying to get different people to get involved. That would be completely foreign to people not too long ago. It's a pretty modern term. Another one, here's a fun one. I think I talked about it, but you have like medieval films and even like epic fantasy films and TV series and cartoons and whatnot. And they have archers who release arrows at the command fire, which is not something that you would get until you get, fire with gunpowder weapons, get firearms. That's why they're called firearms. So, but we are so accustomed to using fire as releasing a projectile, even though in this case, in our case, it would be almost always, except for sport or hunting, and of course not even all hunting, obviously, it would mean, pull a trigger on a firearm and it releases a bullet. That's what we think of as firing, but then we read that meaning that contains the word fire back into arrows, and we just don't think of it as fire because of the explosions that occur to launch the projectile. We merely associate it with releasing a projectile, and historically things like release would be the common commands for archers. And there you go. It's so easy to slip into these errors. Yes, anachronism. So easy to slip into these errors because they're so organic, you see. And I don't know, there's many examples. There are many examples to give. I'm not particularly good at thinking up examples on the spot, but if I come up with another one, I will be happy to help. My bear is growing flat on me. So yeah, shouting loose when medieval ladies are passing by. I remember seeing like a clip of Conan O'Brien in Korea, and he's like, he's being taught like basic Korean things, and so this woman that is teaching him shows him like a card, and it says hello, 안녕하세요, and I can't remember what this is. The second thing she shows him is how much. which is, again, if you study foreign languages, one of the first few things you learn is how much does this cost, because they're assuming you're a tourist. He says, if I go up to a woman and say, hello, how much? I'm getting a slap in the face. It reminded me of that joke. Right. Food in America is, what is this, a steak? I can't see the second emoji, I'm afraid. So yeah. 안녕하세요. Strange language. I remember just taking a glance at the way the writing system works. It's very interesting. I'm not sure if it's derived from Chinese, I know the Japanese writing system is, and not just what they call kanji, which is literally Japanese for the letters of the Han, not Hun, Hun, but Han, Han. So yeah, and even katakana and hiragana are derivatives of like pieces of the kanji, and you create this type of syllable-based phonetic writing system. Unrelated question: is kissing before marriage legitimate? Oof. I hope so. You see, kissing. I mentioned this one, like in the Russian view, old Russian view. There's a thing called fraternal kiss. So you would kiss, two men would kiss on the lips as a sort of fraternal expression of love. We see this in Dostoevsky's brothers Karamazov, between Alyosha and Ivan. Was it Ivan? I need to reread that. It would only take me 2 weeks in one sitting. And just kiss him on the lips. I remember reading that back in high school. I was like, what's happened? But then you read about it, all sort of like how holding hands in a lot of Arabic countries is seen as something two men do. It's context dependent. That's gayer than Indian guy friends holding hands. Yeah, you see, I went in the same direction, although I didn't know it was Indians. Maybe the Muslims in India. Or maybe the Hindus. I'm not sure about that. These are all content dependent. Fraternal kissing in the nude after a long steam. Okay, then we would be, going into improper territory. But I suppose it would have to be slow boy whiteboard being yucked out. Foucault wrote a book about it, probably. I'd rather not expose himself to more than I already have. Public baths are kind of sus. Well, here's the thing, Justin Endley. There's a dichotomy there. Is it that we have become so sensitive to it because it's sexual, or have we become so sexualized that we think of that as too much? Because when I hear things like why women should wear the hijab, it's because not to tempt the men. So the thinking, well, that I understand an argument for modesty, and I'm not for public baths, just to be clear. I'd rather not. But it is something worth inquiring over. Like, that doesn't seem to me like a call for modesty. It sort of makes it seem like, okay, so what, the men are all horn dogs and can't control themselves. It's too one-sided. And it goes beyond the limits that should be expected of modesty and becomes almost weird, exposure. If a man was so adamantly against being, around men in tank tops. It's sort of go, what's actually going on here? The reason I'd be against it because if you wear a tank top, you're a douchebag. Unless you're is a wife beater a tank top? Am I equating them correctly? So unless it's very hot and you're like dying, like would be the case with me, and you tend to keep it indoors, that's one thing. But people who go out of their way to wear those, I see as problematic. Thanks for insulting me, Posh. Hey, listen, last time you were on, I spent most of the time calling Chris Lestrange French. So if we're talking about whom I was most insulting towards, white tank top, wife beater. Oh, it's just white. I didn't know that. I just assumed they were the same thing. Problem with kissing is that if it is in private, it may escalate quickly. You have to know yourself. Yes, I'm also thinking of that. Because it's the escalatory probability of it is what is most concerning. It's called a vest. Okay, Dr. Crispy, you are Irish, so you might start feeding me. I was corrected on what a blouse was, and I said I thought it was the same thing as when we in Serbia see bluza, which is basically a turtleneck. And my trauma-based learning after being shown what a blouse is makes me shiver just using the term. Only white. Oh, well, I didn't know that. Only people who drink Stella Artois are allowed to wear white beaters. Fair enough. Okay. So I've been provided with the nuance of it having to be a white one. Thought any Irish man's wear was a wife beater. Same would apply, like, to Serbia. It's our, northwest, southeast solidarity. Posh never saw the Chappelle skit about Prince, shirts versus blouses. Yeah, I didn't. I said I don't find Chappelle to be that funny. It's just a female shirt. I have been notified, and will not repeat that mistake again. If I ever, suffer from dementia or Alzheimer's or something, those will be one of the things so deeply embedded in me by trauma that I will not make that mistake even then. Chappelle Black KKK skit was hilarious. Yeah, okay. I just say it's not someone I would seek out to watch. He has good jokes, obviously. Sorry. Yeah, you will figure out things, how Brits and Americans call things differently. So, yeah. Oof. Does Bosch support sumptuary laws? I have to look that up because I'm not familiar with it. Any law designed to restrict excessive personal expenditures in the interest of preventing extravagance and luxury. I would be. I wouldn't be too harsh about it, but definitely yes. Thank you for introducing me to the term. I will be using it as we go forward. He's not that funny. The skit was actually a series of stories told by Eddie Murphy's older brother Charlie, true Hollywood stories. I find Eddie Murphy to be funny. He was actually pretty politically incorrect with his stand-up. One of the gay slippery slopes: first white tank tops, then holding hands, then kissing. Sounds like an average day for Iranian men. Chappelle showed he's compromised. Yeah, Again, at least this is later work. Like, what do they call it? Like a philosopher comedian or a comedian philosopher. I'm like, oh, piss off. Honestly, Americans call crisps chips and chips fries and trousers pants. Like, and they call petrol gas. They call a liquid gas, in the immortal words of Jeremy Clarkson. But we don't call a carburetor bonnet. Yeah, as I said, all the terminology I picked up from Top Gear is why the least likely things you would start to adopt if you're a foreigner and learning English is you would get things like car parts and so on from the American terminology, because there are many more American films and TV series and cartoons and whatnot. But then you get Top Gear, which is pretty much makes sure you use the British terminology for anything driving related. At least we call cigarettes cigarettes and not what you. Okay, yeah. Gas for petrol comes from early brand name called gasoline. No, gasoline is an appropriate term, but petrol is from petroleum. So I understand, but it's still the funniest thing ever. There's that song called Gas, 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 I'm gonna step on the gas. I can't get my voice high enough. Then someone wrote before I could, so I was a bit upset, but still happy. So British people sing this: petrol, petrol, petrol. You gotta step on the petrol tonight. Yeah, they say I could care less. I've always had a problem with I could care less. But yes, but if there is less to care, that means you care a certain amount. If you couldn't care less, that means it's at the minimum. So let me think about it. I could care less, but I don't. But that means you're not going lower in the amount that you care. So maybe I'm missing some type of a trajectory that is going towards. Yeah. I couldn't care less makes full sense to me. That means you're choosing to care. Yeah. They're saying sarcastically. Yes, I suppose. But then you would have to say it sarcastically, and then it ruins it. It's sort of like British versus American sarcasm, where in America it tends to be very rambunctious. You tend to emphasize it very much. It's part of the rhetorical, outplaying of your being sarcastic. Double negative. I could care less. No, not exactly. Less isn't exactly a negative. It's an adverb, but it implies less. Like more isn't exactly sort of positive, because it depends on if the verb itself has positive or negative connotations. To love less, to hate more, right? So it's not a double negative. Rubbers are prophylactics. Justin Henley for 5 USD. Thank you, Justin. Says, worst is, I know, right? Why would you agree, I know, and then ask the person if they agree with what you just confirmed? I think it's more that right is a stand-in for, isn't it obvious? Could you believe it? Like, that I could understand. You see, that's what we call interjections. Sort of this thing you sort of shout out, which doesn't necessarily, isn't conducive to using the full semantic value of the word, but is like a stand-in. So it's almost idiomatic. It's like a posh way of saying you could care less, but you won't because you're too good to find a new low. As I say, I'm starting to understand, but I don't like it. If so much of it needs to be explained, it's not a proper insult. It's not properly condescending. Don't give us American excuses. No. I understand, and I don't think you are a could care less partisan. Oh yeah, we were talking about Israel, but I think I showed what I wanted to show, which is basically this. Okay, this is a good thing to close off. Then I can stick around for a bit more for random things. So these things seep out, right? If you have an understanding that, Israeli Jews, let's go specifically, consider themselves to be the people of God in some type of ethnic sense, by some ontological property that they've got, and they have a divine right to the land, and not to mention that they also have a divine right to exterminate anyone who would compromise their right to that land. You're going to have a problem as an observer with the book they claim they get this understanding from. And I mentioned that in such cases, when you're only getting acquainted with the topic as the events that are making it relevant are playing out, and that they're quite disturbing, you're going to get a warped view of it. So, as I've said, I've seen not just this one, multiple people whom I go to for geopolitical analysis have made these claims, and they're not Christian. So they don't have any bulwark, and now they are saying, well, this is what's happening because of X, Y, or Z, because of their religion. And what is their religion based on the Bible? And what am I going to do? Email them? Well, excuse me, sir, but actually, if you go into it, so this is why poison can seep in with these mistaken exegetical, interpretations. And this is also why the church isn't so fond of letting anyone who's a member of the church go and preach. Because even though you're Orthodox Christian, doesn't mean you're right on all things, especially nuances. I myself say there are things I wouldn't debate on, because I don't consider myself competent enough. I consider my knowledge on certain topics sufficient for myself, but not sufficient to debate. Because not only are you going to have your side to understand, but understand the opposing side. And if things fracture, it's fractal, you guys, then you might end up misinterpreting something, and then pushing that misinterpretation. And then other people who are listening, who are more or less neutral observers, are going to say, oh, that's what the Orthodox believe, and you were wrong. And you're sort of responsible for that. At the same time, what is also concerning to me is that it goes both ways, because you can easily say, well, okay, so we should doubt the Israeli government because they're Jewish and they believe that they have divine right to kill whomever they see as threatening to their magic blood and land, blood and soil. But then the other side, they're just sort of, neutral instantiations like NPCs or something. No, they're not. They're Muslims, and read what the Muslims believe about the kuffar and what they're allowed to do to unbelievers, which again I don't think allows you to go and slaughter them, especially the children, etc. But it's just not that simple. But that's why I said motivated exegesis. It's not as simple as, oh, these guys are the victims, the others are the perpetrators. No, you have two motivating ideologies. Do I believe Netanyahu is even religiously Jewish? No, not even remotely. his behavior is very atheistic as far as I'm concerned. So if we're going to go into that analysis, and that's what I see people who are on Israel's side of the conflict, that's what they do. They give you Quran verses and hadiths that are very violent, including, for example, it allows you to kill children. There's a hadith where Muhammad's men come to him and say, "Oh, Prophet, during this raid, we also killed women and children. Are we to blame for that?" He said, "It doesn't matter because they were of them." So what? You go for that, and well, here's a new 2,000-pound bomb coming down the nearest school in Gaza. They would never accept the other side using counterexamples. Never. Either side would never allow that, which is why I'm so bloody upset that no one has any time for nuance, because I understand the urgency, the willingness to act, and it's like, oh yeah, let's listen to the pontificate while there's slaughter going on, or ethnic cleansing if you're on one side, or anti-Semitic extermination on the other. So no one has time for nuance. That is how wars actually work in practice. So I can't find myself blaming the people who feel the sense of urgency, which at the altar of urgency sacrifice nuance or trying to understand the other side. But it is an unfortunate thing, and why we should really devote ourselves to understanding what we talk about. We should understand properly. I'm more than willing to say, when I have a limited knowledge of something, when someone asks and I say, I don't know much about it, here is what I think, go and ask someone who knows better. That's because I don't want you to pick something up from me and have that poison your proper understanding, should it turn out that I was wrong in my limited knowledge. Melaforta says, I'm very late but curious what I missed. Basically, a few of the commentators I listened to on geopolitical events, one of them said that talked about how the Bible basically teaches, as far as they're concerned, how the Jews are the special people and they have a right to this land, they have a right to kill everyone. And I gave examples of why that's not the case. And that's one thing. And the other is on the ethnic idea of like a genetic idea of an ethnicity in the Old Testament, and basically in antiquity in general. Do you watch the Duran? Someone asked me that last time. Not that often. I do watch some people who do watch the Duran, so I get some second-hand Duran takes. Hadith or not, man can hold and kiss each other, but only if more than 70% of the population has been converted. That's from a lost surah of the Quran, which the powers that be don't want you to have. I was told that two wrongs do make a right. I could care less. That can be a meme. Okay, I didn't finish what I was saying. One of my favorite jokes to make is when I'm talking with someone. I just make up like a jokey term. Let's say for Jim, you say Jimmy N. They just say, or I went to the Jimmy N, as you and I like to call it, and just invent a completely ridiculous word and just say, as you and I like to call it, because I don't know, it's so stupid and inane that I just find it funny. Almost everything I find completely, hilarious is that it deals with the context more than the joke itself, which I suppose is what meta comedy is about. But it's very common where I'm from, and then It shows because one of my favorite comedians is Norm Macdonald, who tells jokes, and him telling the joke is more of the joke than the joke itself. Posh is far too accommodating. Leave Moose in the darkness from whence she came. Moose Eye. I was thinking, if you try to write moose, because it's not even the moose, the animal, or moose, the the French, like sweets. Okay, D Sims is leaving. Good night, D Sims. I won't be here for too long. David X Muslim is alive. See ya. Keep on keeping on. David X Muslim. Who is David X Muslim? I believe I've heard it. The more I hear about Hitler, the less I care for him. That was the phrasing, Jado. The more I hear about Hitler, the less I care for him. And he said that on David Letterman, but again, you can't really tell Norm Macdonald's joke. It takes his presence and charisma and his face and everything he does with, like, he tweaks these little parts of telling the joke that end up, being the funniest part of it, and you can't just replicate it. The only way to make them properly funny is to say, oh, this is a Norm joke, because everyone will try to convert it in their head into Norm saying it. Albert Fish is Crispy's uncle. Now, don't laugh at this next part. Posh, have you seen the British comedy called Yes Minister? Oh, yes. And Yes Prime Minister. Love it. And the thing I hate most about it is that if you watch any of the clips on YouTube, about 30 to 50% of the comments are saying the joke, "This is such a good documentary." And it's like, God damn it. Is there any topic you think Orthodox people should be thinking about more? I see a lot of videos about the same things, but some topics aren't discussed at all. Difficult question to ask. Who's Albert Fish? The werewolf of Wisteria, was that the name of the area? So what topic should we focus more on? I suppose a lot of content is geared towards, because it's in English, it's mostly geared towards general issues and most commonly brought up issues that that Protestants or Catholics would have with the Orthodox faith. So that would be fine. So in Arabic, when Christians are going to unite to hold socialist media accountable. David is talking about getting a strike and having his stuff deleted. He uses nothing but primary sources in Arabic. Socialist media accountable. I'm not sure if even conservative ink finds it difficult to hold them accountable. Yeah, and unfortunately, if you deal a lot with Islam, they will target you specifically. But I'm not that familiar with how people deal with strikes and such things, but a lot of anti-Islamic polemicists have this problem. But yeah, so I hope it goes well for him. Melaforta, I think you failed to recognize that Dr. Crispy was quoting part of the joke, or rather the event, where I can never remember the other guy. whom joke was telling the joke. Norm was telling the joke to him, but I can't remember his name. He said he started to wander off, and then Adam Egret jumps in with "Who's Albert Fish?" to save the joke. So, credit to Adam Egret who played the part he was supposed to play enormously well. Good impression. He I know I saw him in a couple of comedies, but I always found him annoying. Right. So we'll stick around for a bit more for this cigarette and another one. Now, don't laugh at 9/11 Blue Skittle. So another reminder, the best way to support is via PayPal. As things stand in the Serbian financial system. And if you've ever had to deal with two separate tax structures, you will, one of them being the American one, you will know why I emphasize PayPal over the usual super chat. But of course, both are appreciated. The PayPal link is in the description. Now, is there anything anyone have any question they would like to have addressed, or do we just go off riffing for like an additional 15 or so minutes? Probably more. This batch of tobacco is pretty good, so they last properly. When it dries up too much, it just burns through it and it sucks. Praise of Folly is a great resource for Geopolitics and Beyond, similar size channel as Posh. Okay, I put that. I read that poorly. Resource for Geopolitics and Beyond, comma, similar size channel as Posh. Well, if you think it's worth recommending, I'm willing to read it out. So I'll show it. Praise of Folly. If you would like to check it out, I can't vouch for it because I'm not familiar. Do you have to learn organic chemistry in your studies? So I have to learn biochemistry and analytical chemistry. I passed like the first grade for analytical chemistry. I'm not sure how much organic chemistry I have to do, actually. I'll have to check that's going to be later on, so going into next year. It may be my monitor, but that liquid yellow color is almost on the floor cleaning spectrum. Why? It's a pretty nice, it's a pretty thick glass, and it's a bit, what do we call, foggy, fogged up a bit, because I've been using it all day, but it's a genuine, nice color. Oh yeah, and because when I went into grammar school, which isn't as fancy as they used to be. Oh, you were studying biochemistry, that's why you asked me. Yeah, I had it in primary school. We have like one semester of biochemistry. Actually, wait, no, organic, sorry. But because I went into grammar school for languages and social studies, or sociolinguistic part of the program, I only had 3 years of chemistry instead of 4, and it was fairly limited because more emphasis was put on history and philosophy and logic, etc. Oh yeah, I was good at it. My paternal grandmother taught chemistry, so she helped out a lot at home. But I like it, actually. There are very few things I don't like learning about, so which is good for having a YouTube channel and being a nerd. At least this type of channel. But it means you don't have a lot of friends. And there it helps to be asocial like myself. I'm one of the people, when the lockdowns kicked in, I was barely affected. But I like chemistry generally. Not as abstractable as I like my studies to be, but that presents its own type of challenge, and I find motivation in that. I could go do with another lockdown. I know what you mean. People have said you either have the mind of physics or chemistry. That's what I suppose I meant. Physics seems much easier to abstract, much more general. Obviously, it can go into specifics, but chemistry is so there are so many variables that it's insane. Posh, I have some organic chemistry textbooks I would be happy to send to you. I would appreciate that, definitely. You mean digitally? Because I don't think it would pay for either of us to send it via mail. Physics is applied math. Yes, but there are also variables there. But chemistry is just nice. Are you going to remember the lower class when you're approached by Big Pharma? I'm not a very good salesman. Luckily for me, that's where being a pharmacist doesn't take a lot of salesmanship, because it's usually just people coming with the prescriptions. You look at it, that's over there. Here you go. I don't have to negotiate with people. I'm of that mind. There are stories of Dutch traders encountering Japanese traders, and the Japanese loved to haggle, and the Dutch hated haggling. So they were not getting along very well, and it reminds me of that scene from, Life of Brian. Alkenes, alkynes. I'm not sure how to pronounce those in English. I have not heard of a lot of them. I loved organic chemistry, lots of fun labs. I was good at it. Happy to hear that. I do enjoy people nerding out. That's not a very common thing to find across the world, in the general public at least. Most people nerd out with like Nietzsche and stuff, and you just go, you bastard. The delivery goat ate my books. It's not covered by insurance. Aluminium or aluminum. Aluminium, definitely. I even accidentally read the first one, aluminium. It's in Latin, it's aluminium. In Serbian, it's aluminium. So the Americans are the exception to the rule on that one. JK. Do you think it's risky for someone to exegete the scriptures who isn't a Greek scholar, or if they can't do as good a job as the translators? That's why we have study Bibles, and it's much better to go with someone who is learned. Because you have people who are Greek scholars like Bart Ehrman. His exegesis is very, very wrong quite often. No singular person can achieve so much expertise that they can exegete things in a proper way, because it's not just about knowing the language, it's about knowing history, it's about knowing all types of socio-cultural indicators that you would need to be acquainted with in order to understand what the text is saying. because you can be a Greek scholar and then you look up a word in some type of dictionary that is specialized for biblical studies, let's say, and it has multiple meanings. So which one do you pick? Bias is going to kick in, which is why the Orthodox Church relies on tradition that is maintained from the times of the apostles, and not just saying, oh, if you go and study hard enough, then you can exegete the word of God properly. So I don't exegete scriptures. I tell you what I try to relay what the church teaches, what the church fathers teach, not something I've come up with, because I can see a lot of times how someone got to a certain understanding, even though it's heretical. I can see it, but that does not mean you can just go with yourselves. Metalavis in Greek means you have passed away. Oof. No real textbooks. Oh, I get what you mean. I thought book rates for shipping are very cheap. Well, it depends. I don't know. Jim Bob sent that package to me that one time. If you remember, I opened it live on his channel. He tried to poison me with those, what are they called? Those like cone-shaped things. Not car keys. Those would be. That's like a clothing piece. I'm certain you know these. What I mean. But it was fun anyway. But maybe it's different for books. I know my brother. Tar keys. Yes, that's what I meant. Not car keys. But which sounds very Greek. But I remember my brother tried to get some books and ended up getting a good rate from Ireland. I'm not sure if that applies for the US. If you're in the US, that is. I sort of just assumed it. No, not bugles, tar keys. It's our final cigarette for the day. It would take 10,000 hours to do seriously, so there is no harm if you're just doing it as a fun exercise. Do you mean exegesis? Because definitely, you read. We have recommended readings for scriptures. Car keys. No, I thought it was car keys. Wasn't car keys like some type of trousers? She kisses it. Well, now you're just bullying me. No, it was those red hot takis. That when you eat those like American like snacks, that's when you can taste inorganic chemistry. You get to know it very personally. Yeah, khakis spelled like that. Matthew. Oops. We had one to emphasize by accident. So yeah, as I said, on next week I'm having my exams. I do have some things planned out, like tomorrow, if everything goes according to plan, at about 5 p.m. my time, CET. I should be live with Garrett. He sent me a reminder, so it is on. With an inquisitive Muslim who is interested in Orthodoxy. A friend of his, so this will be the second time we're talking on his channel, so I will share that out when it happens. On Wednesday, I guess I will be recording with Study of Stuff. And then probably, I don't know what the situation is with Baron Strawberry and when he's available, because I can't do Saturday next weekend, but maybe we try to do Friday if he's available, or I don't know. So we'll see. But then the week after that, I also have something scheduled, which I can't remember right now. So yeah. All my books are real. I'm too old to have any digital copies of textbooks. I mentioned this. My brother and I have a completely different philosophy on this. I understand that with age, you get too used to something, but, I got access to a computer when I was a boy, so I'm much more used to it. Dallas, Texas. I don't mean to dox you, but if you're comfortable sharing that, that's fine. When I die, I may not go to heaven. I don't know if they let cowboys in. My voice is a bit fried from cold beer and talking so much. So, as I said, I do love to hold a book, but I'm not on some visceral level opposed to reading books on the PC. I wouldn't do it on like a mobile phone if I could avoid it. But yeah, I don't have that problem. Stop thinking your way around, feel your way around. That's much better. Busey's, Texas, if I read that correctly, or Buckey's. Although I suppose there would be a K after the C if that was Bucky's. So what do you say, Peter Fotopoulos? Stop thinking your way around, feel your way around. It's much better. That's why we Orthodox say, go to liturgy, pray. Because it is so much so much more important to interact with God on an interpersonal level than it is to delve into, theology textbooks and etc. That's important, but a Christian life is much more important than abstract knowledge. Oof. So yeah, 1 a.m. here. So we got over the 2-hour mark. I don't want to keep you people, not starved, but cut these too short. So I like it when people ask questions. I'm happy to help whenever I know the answer. But the studying is really getting in the way of me doing the pre-recorded ones. I hope to release one this week, or the coming week, I suppose, because my mind going off on tangents constantly, it doesn't get in the way of me explaining a point when I write a script and then edit things. So yeah, they have ethanol free gas by me at a Walmart, about 20 cents more expensive. Very good stream. Thank you, Grant's Modern Life. I know I did go all over the place, but my point is a lot of topics that play out in a similar trajectory do happen, but they require attention on their own. Does your gasoline have ethanol added? I don't think so. No, I don't believe so. Dallas has a lot of people, that's true. Unless we can find like organic chemistry textbook, finders. look up sales from Amazon, who has been ordering the most on organic chemistry. Got to go to bed. Good night. Have a good one. Good night, Gvozden. Gvozdene, I suppose we have a vocative in Serbian. Might as well use it. And as I said, I'm closing off myself, but I'll log off properly once I've finished the cigarette, as I've promised. I had promised, not I have promised. Oof. I'm getting a bit tired myself, as you can see. I'm starting to muddle my words. Sorry, Turpentine Cat. Rapeseed ethanol subsidies turned England yellow. Yeah, we don't get subsidies. We get shafted every time. Every time there's a decrease in the world's price of petrol, like fossil fuels in general, we don't feel it over here because the taxes are there to jump in and save the day. Manny Lentz says Laku noć. Laku noć to you as well. I'm not opposed to digital books. I do not think any of my textbooks are in digital format. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, but by the way, textbooks, get updated constantly. That's part of how they work, and unfortunately, there's a perverse incentive in constantly updating them. Like this edition, that edition, barely anything of importance changes, but it's sort of like a new thing. And then you get another printing, and then schools have to reorder. And very unfortunate that so much of education is hindered by very, very minuscule profits. But yeah, I remember all the people a couple of years ago. By a couple, I mean like 6, 7. Who were still on the liberal trajectory and were sort of like, well, look at all of these companies going woke. Companies should only care about earning money. But as they move down that, how shall we say, line of inquiry, they realize, yeah, you don't want moral companies when they're woke, but turns out if they're completely profit-oriented, they might push for certain surgeries for children, which have no substantive benefit to them, hormone therapies, etc., which are incredibly profitable. And then all of a sudden you want companies to be moral. Well, that's not how it works, because again, these people, when they say you don't want moralizing companies, they just mean go away, stay away from the topics and promoting things that I don't approve of. But do promote things like patriotism, for example, or raise the flag on certain holidays and celebrate like national holidays and maybe even religious holidays that have been more or less secularized in the country. So all of a sudden they realize, like has been the topic of discussion amongst myself or Jim Bob, or if you saw the debate between Jim Bob and Dave Patrick Harry on the other side, on one side, and the two other fellows on the other side, grounding things in secularism and like Jim Bob's community post from today, they just tell you, well, killing is obviously wrong. There he is. Posh, have you checked out the Antioch Declaration from the Calvinist Doug Wilson about and company? Wanted your take. It's about Jew jokes. I have not. So it's so important that they call it the Antioch Declaration. So it seems like I have to check it out. Oh God, the free market of ween chopping. Yeah. They free you from your genitals. It's on Doug Wilson's X. Okay, I'll check it out. Antioch Declaration. Calling it that is sort of like when it's the ancient church of Jesus Christ as preached by the apostles themselves, founded in 1997. I could guess what their take on it was, that they don't like the jokes, but I'd love to hear the explanation of it. Total depravity, yeah. It's part of you, it's part of me. We talked about that, Jim Bob, like total depravity versus election. The dichotomy that is set up is so stark that it's basically dehumanizing towards any outsiders, because you're the super special people. Grade 4 cigarettes long stream between 4 and 7 is the sweet spot to lay the topics up properly. Yes. Nice. There is infighting regarding it. Oh God. Covering that is more of your style, because you would get less angry about it than myself. I'm not much of a troll at heart. I'm a curmudgeon at heart. So I can troll, but you're more of a troll at heart, but you can be curmudgeonly. Just found out today that there's a band called the Calvinists. Did they release all the songs before, registering as a band? Real heretics of Idaho. No, goodness. If I can't joke about the bagels, I'll get so raged they'll have to flee to their special nation once and for all. Well, they seem to be fleeing from their special nation, I'm afraid. So we'll see what happens. Is it true that people in the Balkans start smoking cigarettes in middle school? Sometimes, yes. Most people do in high school, actually. Not me. I actually started after high school, just to be a super special boy, resist all the pressures while they're there, and then when they're not there, what's the point in resisting them? Infighting doesn't sound very predestined. Well, they were predestined to infight. Well, Emmanuel. It must be very fun to jump into their conversations and troll them, because you can just there's no end to predestined jokes. Is it some logical fallacy for Protestants to assume they discovered the true church in the past 50 years that has no connection to the historical Orthodoxy? They would say, and I've heard many explanations of this, the moment they get to you have to emphasize this. Your Honor, I plead predestination. Yeah, but the judge can, like in Islam, can say, well, I was predetermined to find you guilty and punish you anyway. The bad moustache man wanted to give them the island of Madagascar, allegedly. I've heard plenty of theories. I've heard also that Herzl himself thought about some other place in Africa, more like on the continent. I can't remember which nation exactly. But to what abject fool says, they will say that there was always a remnant. You know how in the Old Testament there's always a mention of a faithful remnant? They will say, oh, we have no evidence of them, but they have taught what we teach, but they were persecuted, so we have no records. And they will just appeal, this is what the Bible obviously teaches. And the Bible says the church can't fail. That does not mean that the church can't go into hiding. So they will talk about the blackout or whatever. But they will be basically, they will give you an evidence sort of the way when you try to debate Muslims on whether Abraham and Ishmael built the Kaaba. They will basically interpret anything that can even remotely be interpreted as such in the scriptures in the Old Testament, that is the evidence. And if that doesn't work, they will tell you, well, absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. So but on the other hand, a lot of people actually start learning about Christian history and abandon Protestantism for that reason. So I started off giving you a response as to why that wouldn't necessarily convince them, but there are those who start reading into it, and that's when they convert. The Calvinists' concerts were booked before the world began. That's a good one, Matthew. They read anachronisms and when concept fallacies to come to that conclusion. Well, yes, it's a horrible response, but it's one that works for them. And unfortunately, if you can convince yourself of it, then everything else sounds like you're obfuscating. I still want the lost footage of Jay getting kicked out by Paul Washer. He does a great impression of Paul Washer. That's one of my favorite Jay stream, one on the Calvinist, because it has everything. It has Paul Washer. It has that guy. Some of you guys have been coming to this church with your girlfriends, and just at some point, who the hell do you think you are? And I remember I literally started screaming, laughing when he shouted. It was so unexpected. And I was like practicing the piano. It was quite a while ago. My keyboard still worked. I was just playing it. And when he started shouting, I had to stop and just, when you're playing, just press like 15 notes at the keys at the same time and just wailed laughing. But yeah, we were predestined, I suppose, not to be able to see that footage. He pranked Root. Jay's Twitter is one of the best things to read ever. just memes and then random statements and then all of a sudden a lot of serious topics. So it seems almost insane. So, and I love it. But all right, I gave it at least 5 more minutes without a cigarette, just to be fair. So I'm closing off for today. Thank you, everyone, for being here, for watching. I hope that I've shown some insight. It's a very improvised stream, but I wanted to tell you that it's simply the case that people who don't get deeply into topics can still be affected by regular things. Like if you remember me explaining, I think even to Adam Green, like when they say, oh, she-bears killed a bunch of children for making fun of Elisha for being bald. And I explained, no, it was actually young officers being killed by bears for threatening Elijah to go and sacrifice to the calf. But at the same time, with certain translations, that's a pretty understandable exegesis that they're getting. It's wrong, but they're relying on a translation. And again, that was a pretty popular talking point since the New Atheists. And I invite all of you to not be too hasty to draw conclusions. I know we Orthodox don't tend to do that anyway, or at least we shouldn't. But at the same time, it happens to all of us. We get overexcited about making a certain point, but we shouldn't presume ourselves to be competent in all things. So we always advise caution and, checking things with church authorities, asking our priests, reading the church fathers, then asking the priests about the things we read from the church fathers. So what I'm basically saying is annoy your priest by nerding out. The Bible calls adults children a lot. Yeah, I mentioned that with like the term infantry. There's a reason for it. There's a sense of hierarchy between seniority and like junior positions. So it still exists. But that's, again, something we have to account for and be aware of. And when someone is confused, if we have the opportunity to introduce them to such a phenomenon, we should do so, because, we don't want to cause anyone to stumble. And certainly if someone isn't, merely stumbling, but is outside of the faith because they have these concerns, then we can also raise it then. So when you're an 80-year-old apostle writing about young men, you don't mean under 18, you mean like under 40. There's also that. Infantry. Yeah, that's what that means. And I mentioned like the Senate, it just means like the Council of Elders. And again, junior and senior positions even today are used to, denote hierarchy, not how old people occupying those positions are. But that's it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for everyone who has supported, both via super chats or super stickers in Rachel's case, and via PayPal. It helps a lot. Helps the beer flowing. I'm very grateful for your support. And as I said, tomorrow I should be live with Garrett, and we'll post about it in the community notes, although it's going to be early for quite a few Americans. I mean, I suppose not too early. It will be like 11 a.m. 11 a.m. EST, and then earlier on as you go westwards. So I won't be as absent this week as I was in the previous few weeks. But that's it for now. God bless you all, and I'll hear from you tomorrow.